Ladies and gentlemen, let's get started. It looks like everybody's really enjoying themselves on this Friday afternoon. I call to order the FORA Reuse Authority special meeting. The FORA Reuse Authority Board of Directors is Friday, November 14th, about 1:30. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance, if Mayor Pro Tem Frank O'Connell would do the honor of leading us. Thank you, Frank. Okay, next item on the agenda will be closed session. We'll be discussing two items. First, Public Employment Government Code 54959.7 Bravo, Executive Officer. And second, Conference of Legal Counsel, Litigation, Government Code 54956.9 Alpha, two cases. First, Deepwater Wild versus Florida Reuse Authority, case number M114961. The second is the City of Marina versus Florida Reuse Authority, case number M11856. Prior to going into closed session, is any member of the public wishing to address the board on any of these two items we'll be discussing in public? Seeing no one coming forward, we are now adjourning an open session. We'll leave the next door in closed session, and we'll be back when we get done in that area. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're reconvening an open session. I would ask our Attorney General, Counsel, Mr. John Giffen, if he would report out from closed session, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. The board met in closed session on the items 3A and 3B on the agenda, and heard from counsel. There is nothing to report out.
Thank you very much. Next, we have roll call. Lena?
City of Carmel by the Sea, Mayor Pro Tem Beach. City of Del Rey Oaks, Chair Edelman.
Here.
City of Marina, Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell. Here. City of Marina, Councilmember Morton. City of Monterey, Councilmember Selfridge. Here. Monterey County, Supervisor Potter. Here. Monterey County, Supervisor Pacania. Monterey County, Supervisor Parker. City of Pacific Grove, Mayor Camp. City of Salinas, Mayor Gunther.
Here.
City of Sand City, Mayor Pendergrass. City of Seaside, Mayor Rubio.
Here.
City of Seaside, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. 20th Congressional District, Alec Arago. 17th State Senate District, Nicole Charles. 29th State Assembly District, Taina Vargas Edmond. University of California, Donna Blissberg. California State University, Andre Lewis. Monterey Peninsula College, Walter Tribley. Monterey Peninsula Unified School District, P.K. Diffenbaugh. Monterey Salinas Transit, Lisa Reinheimer. Transportation Agency of Monterey County, Debbie Hale. United States Army, Colonel Fellinger. Board Order BRAC Office, Bill Collins. Marina Coast Water District, Director Moore.
Here.
Chair Edelman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Lena. Next, we have acknowledgments, announcements, correspondence. Michael?
Yes, Chair and members of the board, I only wanted to make a note to thank all the members of the board for their indulgence over the last couple of weeks. We had a number of staff members that were out. Two had deaths in the family. Another had a rather serious enough accident to break several ribs and fractured hip. And we also had other staff members that were out. So we did our best to respond to questions, but we were a little bit light on staffing the last couple of weeks. I appreciate the kind words from all of the members of the board.
Thank you, Michael. Next, consent agenda. Any member of the board wishing to pull any items for questions or comment? Yes, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the reimbursement agreement, I just want to make sure that we're, even though Marina Community Partners is only paying a portion of the developer fees on the new houses because of the credit and the reimbursement, FORA would still be putting 30% of the total fee into the endowment fund. Is that correct? I want to make sure we've got money for our HCP.
Yes.
Great. And would that come out of the capital improvement pot, since that's where the,
As
how would that
developer
get?
fees are paid, 30% of all developer fees collected go into a reserve account.
Right.
And so it is reported every year in both the CIP and in the budget.
Right, but in this case, the developer is not going to be paying their full fee in exchange for the fact that they built a road. So would we be, since we're not going to receive the full amount, would we be taking that out of the capital improvement fund where we would normally have taken money to produce the road, or that's?
Yeah, that's the way the credit is applied. The developer is paying the full fee, part in cash, part in work that's done. They only do work that would come from a capital program element that FORA would do. And it comes at the same price that FORA estimated that segment of the capital improvement program to cost.
Right, right. Just trying to figure out where in the FORA budget the the money gets allocated from.
Jonathan, you want to add a note to that?
So within the fee structure, out of the fee, 30%, you're correct, goes to Habitat Conservation Plan funding. So with this reimbursement agreement, the developers can reimburse for road construction that they've built, but they still pay a portion back to the fee. So it'll be recalibrated to make sure that the 30% for those particular fees will be going towards a Habitat Conservation Plan.
Thank you.
Any other questions or any comments by members of the board with regard to the consent agenda? Out of the public, any member of the public wishing to pull any items for a question? Please come forward to the microphone so we can hear you. You can be on record.
Yvonne Stone, Director of Photo and Environmental Justice. I would like to have item C under business items, talking about the authorization to purchase for the purchase of pollution and legal liability insurance coverage.
We're talking about the consent agenda right now.
We're talking about the three items,
Consent agenda.
A, B, C?
Yes, 7A, 7B, 7C.
Okay, 7B for that one.
What was your questioning or comment?
Ma'am, you're allowed to comment on the consent items, but you're not
Thank
allowed
you.
as a member of the public to pull the item.
Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
I would like to know what this means, talking about the FORA and the City of Marina reimbursement agreement amendment. Can I ask a question, or do I?
With all due respect,
Through the chair,
yes, go ahead.
I'll go ahead and pull B.
Thank you.
7B, okay. Okay, let's go ahead and
Move the remainder of the consent agenda minus C.
okay, Mayor Rubio made the motion to approve all the items with the exception of 7B. Do I have a second to that? Okay, Supervisor Potter, second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, now for 7B, Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby, what is your question or comment?
I'll wait for the public to ask a question.
Okay, I believe our executive officer will answer the question that was asked.
Do you know the question? Why don't we just wait and get the question?
Ma'am, would you like to come forward and ask your question, please?
My question is to get an understanding of item B concerning reimbursement, the reimbursement agreement for the City of Marina. We hear these terms all the time that's already been discussed among your board members, but for us, this community-based organization that is representing public, I don't have the information about what exactly we're talking about here.
Thank you. Michael, can you explain that, please?
Yes, so Chair Edelin, members of the board, and the public. The Port Rodriguez Authority adopts a capital improvement program each year, and that capital improvement program describes a number of improvements that we're required to do. In some cases, the Port Rodriguez Authority performs those individual items. In other cases, FORA works with the individual jurisdiction and its development partner to build those improvements. In the cases where the jurisdiction and or its development partner undertake those improvements, we craft a reimbursement agreement between FORA and the jurisdiction, sometimes three-party agreements that also include the developer. We've done this several times in the past, once with the East Garrison project in the county of Monterey, and twice with the city of Marina. This particular reimbursement agreement was debated by the FORA board in 2007 with respect to several roadway elements. This particular item would amend that agreement that was adopted on May 3rd of 2007 to allow for a reimbursement that's described in the board report based on the new housing that's being constructed in the Dunes on Monterey Bay project.
Thank you very much, Michael. Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby, does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you, and I thank the executive director for showing his expertise in these matters and moving us forward.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on item B? If not, entertain a motion.
I move we approve the item.
Okay, Mayor Rubio,
Second.
motion and second with Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Next, we have a business item 8A. Second vote, Preston Park operating and capital budgets.
Chair,
Yes, Mayor Gunter.
I believe this item should be pulled pending the current matter that's before the City of
Second.
Marina and FORA.
Okay, we have a motion with Mayor Gunter and a second by
Second.
Mayor Rubio. Discussions on the motion. Just a comment. I understand the attorney for Marina has also asked this motion be tabled until a final determination between the agreement between Port Rodriguez Authority and the City of Marina. Any other discussion among the board with regard to tabling this item? Yes, Mayor Rubio.
Just a question, we'll be able to take up this matter as a second vote at a later time.
Yes, it's being
When it's
tabled right
appropriate.
now.
Thank you
That's
very much.
correct. Any other questions or comments with regard to, yes?
Through the chair, I guess it's tabled and it'll come back up in conjunction with the next available opportunity,
Right,
depending on what happens in the future.
exactly. Right now, we have an agreement working out with Marina. Hopefully it'll go through, in which case the whole item basically is gone, disappeared. If it doesn't, if for some reason, we're not able to reach an agreement, we could always bring it back in future. Any other comments or questions, members of the board? Out to the public, any questions or comments by members of the public on pulling the item? Okay, back to the board. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Very good, thank you. Next, we have the executive officer contract amendment. This will be covered by our attorney counsel, John Giffen.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In our last meeting, after a first vote which approved a merit increase for Executive Officer Coulamard, it was discovered that the language of the existing contract did not exactly mirror the language of the prior contract that did allow for a merit increase. And rather than proceed with a second vote on that issue, I thought it was most prudent to take that matter off, to take the second vote off, and have the board take up whether or not it would like to amend, vote on amending the executive officer contract to conform to the intent of council and of Mr. Coulamard and of this board when it approved the contract back in July. This is clearly a mutual mistake, and that we can, the board is entitled at any time to consider an amendment and to make the contract conform to what I believe and what Mr. Coulamard believes, and I think the board believes, was the actual intent of the parties when it approved the contract back in July. So that is the item that's in front of the board currently.
Thank you. I'd like to make a comment, first of all. First of all, I'd like to thank our Councilmember Victoria Beach for asking a question about looking at the contract. I'd also like to thank both the Monterey County Weekly and the Monterey Herald for pointing out the wording of the executive officer's contract. The current contract does not permit the granting of a merit increase. Our local press truly function as a free press should, keeping an eye on this board and other local elected boards. We appreciate the work that they did there. By not including the executive officer's contract in the original board packet when the original merit increase was proposed, it was an oversight of as chair of this board. That's my responsibility, okay, and that was my screw up. I've screwed up before, and I'll probably screw up again in the future. I apologize for it, but we're trying to be transparent. We're trying to go back from the beginning and make things right now. So, on the advice of legal counsel, as John mentioned earlier, we're putting a revised contract on there for consideration. All we're talking about today is about the revised contract. If the executive committee in the future decides they want to bring back the idea of a merit increase, that'll be in the future meetings in the future. But right now, we're looking at should there be a portion in the executive officer's contract for a merit increase. So that's what we're talking about. Questions, comments by board members? Mayor Rubio.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think the board had directed the legal counsel to assemble the various contracts and put them into one. And the addition of the language that's under question right now was not a negotiated change or was not anticipated by this board. We didn't ask for it, and so I'm glad that we're going to go back and fix this and make it the way it's supposed to be. That reflects the previous contracts and just an assemblage of those contracts in a concise form. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions by members of this board? Yes, Mayor Kemp.
Not sure whether I should wait for public input first or let me ask a couple of the questions. One of the things that strikes me about the wording of the bonus/merit is that they are treated differently for PERS considerations. Bonuses, as I understand it, do not become part of compensation in calculating PERS benefits and PERS cost, and merit pay would. And I just want to check my understanding of that aspect of the implications of merit versus bonus.
Your understanding is correct.
Okay. So with that, I just would note, and I don't know if anybody else is aware of this, but when FORA sunsets and this agency terminates, there's a termination liability to PERS of $10.6 million, according to the valuation report that just came out. So one of the things that strikes me is that we need to consider when we talk about PERSable compensation, the implication at that point in time for FORA and how that obligation would be settled and whether CalPERS would actually have the courage to try to collect it. But that said, the other part of what I remember when this contract was revised is trying to improve the transparency by getting all the core elements in one place. And at some point, I would like to suggest an alternate approach to give us the flexibility that I think rightfully we should have, which is to take out the offending sentence rather than layering in the merit increases. What that allows is that the increase should be in the base compensation. And I probably ought to ask, what's the difference between merit pay and changes to base compensation?
John.
Merit pay and changes in base compensation? There really effectively is no difference.
There may be a simpler way to do this then.
Okay, other questions, comments by members of the board? Yes.
Very briefly, I just find, in my opinion, that this is just a motion to reconsider a previous decision made by the board, and I do not think it's appropriate in the circumstances to reconsider a previous vote after this period of time has gone by. Thank you.
I'd ask for a legal opinion by our attorney counsel.
A legal opinion on that position?
Yes.
Oh, I think the board can decide to amend the language of the contract at any time it feels necessary.
Okay. Thank you. Other comments, questions by members of the board? Seeing none, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public? Any comments?
I don't have a question. I have a comment. This seems to be a personnel matter, and we have no input as to how your employees are paid or otherwise, and never received the information or voted on. So it's kind of hard to comment on a subject like this.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say, one comment here, that I don't see why this is broken or needs fixing. As I recall, there was quite a lot of controversy at the time of the extension of FORA in the first place, when it was due to sunset, and whether it should be extended at all. And part of the controversy was how it was run in the first place, and why 20 years later, I mean, we still haven't finished the corridor reuse authority process. So I don't know where merit comes in, you know, why there should be a merit increase at this point, after we've had this whole entire corridor reuse process carry on for 20 years. And I'd also like to add that there's a great number of the public, the working public, that would consider the current executive director very well compensated. So I don't really see that there's some necessity for a merit increase at this time whatsoever. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address this item? Seeing none, public comment period is closed. Back to the board. Any further discussion, or entertain a motion?
I'd make the motion to amend the executive contract as noted in Section A.
We have a motion by Mayor Rubio. Have a second by Supervisor Potter. Discussion on the motion? Yes,
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to say that, you know, this is a little bit, the whole question of having flexibility about what the board does in terms of compensating its executive officer seems reasonable, but because it is so tied up with the matter that was before us last month about a significant compensation increase, I'm a little torn, because we asked for some information that would actually show the history of merit and COLA and various other adjustments, and for me to even decide whether merit increases should be included in this contract or not, it would have been helpful to have that information. I recognize that you know, the person who would have provided that information, you know, was out for family reasons, so I'm not blaming staff. I'm just saying that it really is hard to determine what the appropriate thing is to do. I was perfectly comfortable with the terms of the contract as it now is before any changes. It seems to me that in the period of time that we're winding up the FORA's duties, and the executive officer is well compensated, that any increases could be accommodated through cost of living adjustments or bonuses, that this board would have plenty of flexibility. So I guess I'm just a little concerned about the, I just don't really feel that changing the contract at this point is necessary, and I share some of the concerns about the PERS obligation, already quite significant, and I think we would be prudent to be a little more cautious about adding to that. Thank you.
Other comments? Yes, Mayor Camp.
Thank you, Chair Edelin. There is, in my mind, another approach to this that actually simplifies some of the intent, and I actually agree that we did not and cannot handicap ourselves from modifying this agreement. We have not only the right to do that, but this particular clause crept in there for reasons that I don't understand. But what was significant at the time, this was all the bits and pieces of this contract were collected together, is we noted it was very hard to trace what the actual compensation was through all the iterations over the years. So the idea was to bring everything all together in one place. And with that thought in mind, my belief is the more appropriate modification to this contract is to look at paragraph A, just above the incentive bonus, except as a consequence of a COLA or longevity pay, Boulevard's salary should not be adjusted, etc. I think we ought to just take that sentence out. And that resolves the dilemma of whether or not the board has the option to provide a change in base pay. Furthermore, I think we ought to leave paragraph B, which is the motion before us, absolutely as it is. There's nothing wrong with that paragraph allowing a bonus, which would be, by the way, a non-purchasable item. And any merit increase, we've already said it's exactly the same thing as changing the base pay. Just change the base pay if that's the decision of the board, but keep it in a simpler form so that we don't have to trace through a lot of different extra pieces to figure out what the current compensation is. That would be my personal recommendation. I personally cannot support the motion that's before us, but certainly could support the more direct process of taking out the wording that's really tripping us up to begin with.
Is that a motion?
You already got a motion.
Or is that a substitute motion?
It would be a substitute motion, but yes, that's a substitute motion.
Or would the original motion maker amend the motion to include what Mayor Camp is saying?
Well, in that case, I'd amend my motion to refer this to the executive committee for further review.
So for clarification on the suggested modification, that would be then for consideration of Mr. Kemp's suggested language changes and any other language changes that might be appropriate.
Which allows for the bonus.
Okay, now I'm lost here. So we have the original motion maker will amend the motion to refer to the executive committee using Mayor Camp's language for further study to see if that in fact meets the intent of the executive committee to bring back before this board. Right. And do we have a second on that? Okay, so we have a motion and second. Your substitute motion withdrawn?
Yes.
Okay.
And can I now comment on the current motion?
Yes, you may.
Which is one of the things that, and I totally support that one. I just want to add a thought. In our city, we're looking a lot at cafeteria plans and other forms of compensation that give greater flexibility. The reason I would feel comfortable with actually acting today simply by taking out the sentence in paragraph A is that I think every other aspect of this contract allows that concept to be embodied in any future amendments to the contract, including base pay and cafeteria elements and so on. So in a sense, I think what we actually want to accomplish could be accomplished today, but if it goes back to executive committee, that's fine with me.
Okay, any other discussion on the amended motion?
Through the chair,
Yes.
I like what
Mayor
Mayor Kemp just brought to the table, and I think it's workable, but we need to make sure we leave this issue where it was just, do the board have the right to increase the salary of the executive director? We shouldn't mislead the public about we're voting about how much it should be. It's about, do we have the right? That's all that was on the table, and I think it's a better way. I think what you said is perfect. As long as we leave ourselves that wiggle room, and if the exec team want to go back and take a look at it, that's fine. But if we're going to vote this in affirmative, all of us, we're agreeing that we need to have the ability to do that. And so I'm waiting for some negative votes to say we shouldn't have that ability to do it.
Okay, any other discussion on the amended motion? Let's have a roll call vote, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Motion maker, please repeat the motion.
To refer to the executive committee the additional consideration of the language that was offered by Mayor. Yeah.
Okay. That answer your question? Yes. Councilmember Morton.
Yes, so my question, as I understood Mayor Kemp, was also not to make the lined-in changes on page 33 of our staff report is taking out the merit increase wording out of subparagraph B. I understood that was what he was also asking the committee to look at. And I wanted to affirm that
Yes, I understand that. And
that was
and
part
we
of the
have,
motion.
we have the ability to go back into the tape and understand exactly what it said. But I also would ask staff to bring to the executive committee that portion of the contract in each of the iterations so we can see the genesis and the background on that portion of the contracts.
It will be done.
Thank you.
And
Yes.
And I would suggest also in that review and how they're modifying these, looking at how the past contracts were applied, looking again at what has been asked for at the public hearing about when the dates of when increases occurred and what those increases were. Because the contract language is one thing, but the application of it in what's happened historically is also important in the consideration of these terms. So if that goes to executive committee, that would be helpful.
And I would just refer you to the actual agreement that was, the recitals, paragraph 1A, sets forth really the entire history of the base contract and the extensions that have been granted over the years. And those were all in front of the board in July when it was.
So then I'm not making myself clear. What I mean is that if there was a cost of living increase January 1st, 2012, and there was a step increase because of longevity, some date 2013.
Sure.
That's what I think that the public is asking for, and as a board, I know we've asked for that into consideration. So when it goes to the executive committee, seeing that, how it's applied to the actual numbers is very informative and helpful in guiding this board.
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Mayor Rubio.
But I kind of disagree with that because that will be the function of determining whether there's a merit increase and how much and so on. And that should not be part of determining the language in the contract.
Okay. That will be covered eventually down the road, I'm sure. Any other discussion on the amended motion? Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Mayor Pro Tem Beach? Yes. Chair Edelin?
Aye.
Mayor Gunter?
Aye.
Mayor Camp?
Aye.
Councilmember Morton? Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby? Yes. Supervisor Parker? Mayor Pendergrass? Yes. Supervisor Potter? Yes. Mayor Rubio? Yes. Councilmember Salford?
Yes.
The substitute motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Appreciate everybody. Next, we have the authorized purchase of pollution and legal liability insurance coverage. Our executive officer will be covering this. Michael?
Yes, Chair Edelin and members of the board, last month you had a rather thorough presentation about the pollution, legal liability, the fact that we have a policy that will expire this year. Last year and during this year, in 3 separate actions, you authorized us to proceed forward with soliciting a provider for pollution legal liability as the current policy expires. We presented last month the fact that we had gone through a rather extensive vetting process with 4 potential bidders. We wound up with 1 who was presenting for this region. All the providers on Fort, all the jurisdictions on Fort Ord. Coverage, that would be a 10-year coverage that would begin when the one we have ends, and then would end 10 years from now. So this is coverage that will survive FORA and will continue to provide protection for those that were interested. We have moved forward with seeking whether the jurisdictions are interested. We have a full level of interest. In fact, there was more interest than we anticipated. We expected FORA to keep about 10 million, and we would provide 40 million for others. I think at this point, Jonathan, we're prescribed to where FORA would have less than 10 million in order to accommodate everyone else in terms of coverage. And we asked last month if you would authorize the executive officer to bind that coverage and to work out agreements with the individual jurisdictions desiring to have pollution legal liability coverage. that provides coverage for the jurisdictions and FORA in the event that some unknown contaminant is found somewhere on the base. Barry Steinberg from our law firm of Cutak Rock that provides special counsel with respect to this item and others is here if you have any questions about what's provided in your package, but staff is requesting your authorization to allow me to bind that coverage pretty much as we described last month. We promised to bring this back if we didn't have to do it before today, and so we brought it back for your formal endorsement to bind this coverage.
Any questions by board members? Yes.
Yes, through the chair to the executive officer. On page 38, I'm just wondering, it says named insured. Could you indicate which of those have actually agreed to take the insurance policy and pay the premium? I know Delray Oaks has decided not to. I'm just wondering. I don't remember the city of Marina.
The list is on page 38.
Yes.
And all of the folks there in those amounts have asked for that amount of coverage.
And
Jonathan, would you clarify?
So the staff report was actually written before there was one change to City of Seaside. So the request went up from 1 million to 5 million. That's the one change.
I must admit that I do not recall the city of Marina actually voting to take that coverage. Does the executive officer remember receiving notification?
That amount was
that was communicated from the city manager. That was what City of Marina would like to have as part of this.
Okay, but I think it still has to come before the council, but thank you.
Other questions by members of the board? Yes, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not a question, but a comment. Just wanted to thank the work of council and staff in putting this together. It has come forward to, I think, through CAMC and through the county, and I have heard comments about, just expressing appreciation for the, the thoroughness of the coverage and the reasonable price that you were able to get. So just wanted to express the appreciation that I've been hearing.
Well stated. Other questions, comments by board members? Seeing none out to the public. Any questions or comments by members of the public?
Yvonne Stone, Executive Director, Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. This particular item, purchase of pollution insurance, we have had problem after problem with pollution on Fort Ord. And since this insurance is for cities, the cities are the people who live in the communities, who live in the housing, who you represent. So we have concern about how this will really protect the people in your jurisdiction, because we don't know, and we don't know how it would be distributed, and we don't know under what circumstances this insurance will be used. For instance, the mall has vapor intrusion, which will take the EPA or for the cleanup approximately 5 years. This is the stuff that comes up out of the ground, the gases. And we're talking about how people will be affected. They're affected by the burns on Fort Ord. They're affected by the carbon tetrachloride that's supposed to be in Preston Park that they claim they cleaned up with some kind of white milky substance. They're affected by the vapor intrusion. So this insurance should not be said out to the public that it's just for the jurisdictions with nothing to follow. So we really do need some clarification on this. And what about, and I was told that it's not for individuals. If it's not for individuals, it's not for horses, it's for people. So exactly what are we doing and what are we talking about? Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next public speaker, please. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board on this item? Okay, seeing none, public comment period is closed. Mr. Steinberg, did you want to address the question that was made by the member of the public?
Absolutely correct in that this policy provides no protection for individual property owners. It was never intended to do that. That was not the charter that came from this board. There is no difference in who is protected essentially under the policy that is expiring and the new one. The policy is designed to protect governmental entities who are in possession of the former property of Port Ord. I think we can all understand that when Port Ord is built out and there are, all the property has been distributed by whatever means through development entities or whatever, there may be 5,000 individual property owners sitting at Port Ord. If you own a home any place right now and you want pollution legal liability insurance, buy it. Whether you need it or not is an individual decision. And I think that the circumstance that was described with respect to vapor intrusion or carbon tetrachloride, if there's a property owner that believes they have that exposure and that risk, they should buy the insurance. Quite frankly, if they have a loan on their house, I would expect that that would have been an insurance requirement somewhere along the way. But again, this policy is designed to deal with a very finite population that has risk, and those are the municipal governments. It is designed to protect them from catastrophic risk, not the smaller size claims, so that the entity, the municipal government, is not bankrupted by some environmental hazard. It's a long-term policy. It meets the needs of the municipal governments that are to be covered. If individual property owners want insurance, by all means, they should go buy it.
Thank you, Mr. Steinberg. Okay, back to the board. Entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have the motion maker is Mayor Gunter, second Mayor Rubio. The motion is to authorize executive officer to purchase PLL insurance coverage not to exceed $1,710,000 comprised of premium, broker fee, and surplus lines tax, and to authorize executive officer to enter into a repayment agreement with named insured to allow up to 2 years for named insured to repay FORA their prorated share of PLL insurance premium in the form of the attachment in our packet. Okay, any discussion on the motion? Saying none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it. Next, we have to approve the agreement with the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. This is Mr. Hulamar. He'll lead this one off.
Yes, Chair Edelin and members of the board, last spring, the board considered adding to the budget for this year for the selection of an economic development specialist that would perform specialized economic development activities on behalf of the Monterey Bay region as it affects the former Port Ord. Over the course of the following 5 months, the FORA staff went through a recruitment process and a solicitation process. We had participation by representatives from the jurisdictions and from the business community. That selection process had a number of qualified candidates apply. None of them were interested in taking the job at the price we had to offer. And as a consequence, we came forward last month with an information item outlining the 3 options we could use to move ahead. Those are included again in your board report today, which is to reinitiate the advertisement for the position and to seek again a economic development specialist, recognizing that others in Northern California, Sacramento is soliciting right now, I think they just closed for a position at $190,000 a year. Similarly, at that price or higher in other parts of the state of California for economic development director or specialist position. Another option would be to reconfigure the position and consider the possibility of having FORA staff perform part of that and solicit consultants to provide additional support and help, coordinating that with our colleagues at California State University, Monterey Bay, University of California at Santa Cruz, Monterey Peninsula College, Naval Postgraduate School, and other places to continue to get the job-creating activities that originate with the educational institutions producing business. Third option would be to work with an effort that's been moving along in a regional effort started by the Monterey County Business Council, now a separate entity called the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership that provides economic development services focused on being technologically proficient, a very rather data-driven effort, which was similar to what we were proposing that the economic development specialist would do. And under that option, FORA would enter into an agreement with Monterey Bay Economic Partnership for those services. Mary Ann Leffel, Brian Turlington, representing Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, are here today, and will want to make a few comments in this regard once I finish my report. So of those three options, Chair, depending on how you want to proceed with this, staff can answer questions on the three options, and if there's a desire by the board to consider this, staff is recommending, strongly considering, using the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, which we think would be a most direct way to participate in a regional way in this effort.
Let's go ahead, Mary Ann, why don't you and Brian come forward and give us your presentation, please.
Good evening or good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members. I'm Mary Ann Leffel, and I am on the founding board of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. Brian Turlington is with me. He is the existing Economic Development Director for the partnership, and he's wearing two hats. This started about 2 years ago with a group of us from Monterey County, the cities of Salinas, Seaside, Sand City, Marina, Gonzales, King City. I think that's all to begin with. It was a group that, as we looked at ourselves individually, none of us had the base of assets that could attract the type of businesses that we wanted to bring to this area. High-tech companies, people that didn't use a lot of water, but people who might need some land or they might need a little bit of water. There was no one that could attract it all. So we looked at ourselves as a region. We looked at Hollister. San Juan Bautista had the ability to fulfill some of it. Watsonville, Santa Cruz had the ability. We had the ability in certain parts of Monterey County for some, but not all. What happens in economic development, the key word in this entire region, like it or not, is the word Monterey. The word Monterey is really, that is the word that they find. They don't, as economic developers, they don't say, let me go to Gonzales or let me go to Sand City. They don't even know that some of our really good communities exist, but those might be the place where we need to put the particular entity if we can have a one voice talking to them and bringing them into our area to pursue going further. At this point, we have 18 fully paid-in members, to include the County of Santa Cruz, County of Monterey. We have the Economic Development Corporation for San Benito County, and we have the Santa Cruz County Business Council. We are in talks right now. We have invoices out to 7 other cities that have indicated that they would like to join, and several of you are our members to include educational institutions. So we believe if we want to compete on a national level, and if we want to do some onshoring, which is to bring some companies here that now have call centers or they have places that they are doing business out of our area, that we really need to work together. So that's how we came to this. We've got a website. It's mbep.biz. It is modeled after Charlotte, North Carolina, Charleston, Indianapolis, other places that have already taken this step to look at regional economic development. The former Fort Ord is a big chunk of that. There's no doubt about it. But there are not all the assets right within this footprint to be able to do it. I, as you know, I've been in conversation with many of you over the years. I will struggle to say how I say this. when UC Santa Cruz first took over the Invest Center, um, there were 130 companies, and that was from Laura Lee Martin, who was the original director, that had inquired to bring their businesses to Monterey County because they read about the UC Invest Center. The UC Invest Center was not prepared to accommodate them because they went through planning, they went through everything. None of those companies were passed on to any of the cities or to the county. So what we did is we lost that opportunity, which for me is a shame. We don't know how many of those could be up and running and thriving today, but there was nothing to pass them on. So what we try to do now is to capture them centrally, look at who might have the appropriate assets to take care of them, and then work with all of you to bring them home. So that's really what this is about. Bud Colligan, who is the retired CEO of Macromedia, graciously offered, I guess would be a good term, to Michael in a conversation about a month ago, that if we were to take a portion of the FORA money for economic specialists, that he personally would match $100,000 a year for 2 years to get it off and running. So we've captured, through our own efforts, we have about 100,000 paid in through many of you. And as I said, we've got invoices out to another 7, and we are continually growing. So that's what I know.
Okay. Thank you, Marianne. Any questions of Marianne, Brian, or FORA staff on this item on the agenda? Any questions or comments? Seeing none from board members, out to the public. Any questions by members of the public?
We have been standing at a podium and standing before this FORA board, new, old, number of people in our community lost jobs, lost their way of life, lost careers. And in this document, it states that the economic development process or something is the sole process of FORA. We're talking 20 years down the road. We have people out there that are homeless because of a federal process they had nothing to do with. Somebody had the responsibility, along with BRAC laws, base closure laws, to rehire with those people jobs that they had lost so that they could continue on with their lives and ability to take care of their families. Here we are right now talking about an organization where local government can join. We're the Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. We have not been contacted by these people. We are still being ignored in this process, and it has to stop. It means that our community, the way we know it, is being disenfranchised, not participating in the decisions that affect them and their families. This has to stop. We're the reason you all are here. You're not here just because you have nothing else to do. You are here because of your constituents. And this needs to stop. We need to be included. People need to participate in the decisions that are being made that are impacting their lives and their livelihood.
Next public position.
My name is Bill Lipe. I'm a resident of Monterey County. I just want to thank Marianne and her team and all of you folks out here in the various cities within our county for participating in trying to make our community better, to try and bring jobs, badly needed jobs for all of the folks in our community. So I don't see this as a bad thing, and I just want to say thank you to FORA and thank you to Marianne and the organization she represents. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other public speakers?
Hi, my name is Amy Velasquez, and then I'm a Fort Ord Environmental Justice Network. And before I speak, I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. When Mr. Hulamar was speaking in regards to the MBPE accepting, I guess, the position. He was saying, it sounded like he was saying that no one else would accept the amount, so that is why, I guess, we went with this organization. Is that correct? I just want to make sure I'm understanding that right.
What I said earlier, and I'll repeat it, was that we were authorized to seek a specialist to perform economic development services, that we offered that job to the general public. It was advertised for approximately 6 weeks. We received a number of completed applications with resumes. There were a half a dozen or so folks that were qualified to perform that work as advertised in the flyer that went out and was posted at FORA offices and other places. And then we went through a selection process. After that selection process, the job was offered to 3 that the panel thought were qualified to do the work. None of those 3 would accept the position based on what we had to offer as authorized by the board.
Okay, okay, so then I didn't understand it right. I find it strange that, not to say that they're not qualified, I'm pretty sure they're very qualified to handle the work, but it seems that there are many organizations that would have loved to have taken that position, that would have been qualified, that are struggling and might have even accepted less money. So I'm not understanding the process in regards to when you say it was advertised or sent out to the public. Where was it sent, or how was that sent out? Because, like I said, there are many organizations that you could probably call them today and they would say, what? This position was available. We were never contacted. So, I mean, I just kind of wanted clarification on that, because it just seems that you said that there were 3, but they wouldn't take it, and so this organization did, but there seems to be a lot of organizations out there that would take it, and like I said, that are hurting for money that wouldn't have, objected to it. So I'm just not understanding the process in regards to maybe the selection process or the notification process.
Thank you very much. Next public speaker, please.
Hi, Margaret Davis. I actually yesterday spent all day at the Regional Urban Design Guidelines that put on for FORA by Dover and Colt. Extremely well done and informative. The ideas were flying like sparks off an anvil. And at the economic one, Ms. Leppel did come and sit at my table, very charming, and I really appreciated her insight as to the question of what would be key things that could improve the economics of Fort Ord, and all these ideas going from the kind of housing available, building an identity, open space, etc. I appreciate Ms. Leppel's contribution, which was adding broadband to Fort Ord, and I think that's very important. But I think that what I appreciated from this session and from having attended the colloquium was the value of the infusion of new perspectives, new faces, new ideas, people who are coming to it with a blank slate, but informed by national and international success in very similar contexts, where they have something very tangible and new to bring us. And we have benefited from Ms. Leppel's organization, from many organizations here on the peninsula for many decades, and we have reaped the benefit of that. But I do believe that that we need to be pursuing this great start that FORA has made with the colloquium and bringing people in from the outside, with this thing going on right now, to get the contacts that we don't have right now, to go out to those people who have the magic key that we're not aware of right now. And so I would urge you to reinitiate this position advertisement with a wider scope, and I think that we will be very happy with the results. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment with regard to this item?
Good afternoon, Chair Edlin, members of the board. Doug Yount, speaking on behalf of CSUMB. I want to first say and encourage the board to support the contribution to Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. The $100,000 is very important, and if the match could come, or an incentive could come from Bud Culligan as well, that's a great leveraging of funds. And I want to illustrate that the university supports that very strongly. There is an opportunity here also, though, for the $64,000 that's remaining beyond the $100,000 for the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, and there's some there's other very significant economic programs, economic development programs, particularly for small business that are out there that CSUMB sponsors, and specifically the Small Business Development Center, Startup Weekend, Startup Challenge are all very important economic development programs that particularly the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is focused on larger, more comprehensive and broad focus. This would be a great complement. So in the future, I'd encourage the board to think about, the staff report talks about how FORA would reallocate the remaining $64,000 in available budget to support economic development. And so I think it's important that the board in the future consider the use of that $64,000 towards other targeted programs as well, and such a request will be forthcoming in a letter to the board from Dr. Ochoa. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Next.
There's been a lot of economic development programs all over the state that haven't really gotten, that people haven't made a big issue out of. If you take a look at Stockton and what they did with the Army Depot, Mesa Air Force Base, I think in Texas, didn't they have a big economic program with Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio? There's a few others out there, but they did an outreach to all the communities in the area. So Mary Ann's right on the track again. I support it.
Thank you very much. Any other members of the public wishing to address this item on the agenda? Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, Dave Spar, Director of Economic Development for the County of Monterey. I had the pleasure of speaking to the 3 candidates that were interested in the position. They're extremely interested in the position, and they would love to work for the Fort Ord Reuse Authority. Unfortunately, a 2-year contract, and the idea of maybe Fort Ord Reuse Authority retiring someday was a prospect that they just couldn't get their hands around and really commit to, although they saw that the work was vital. I think today we have a different opportunity that's before us. And the opportunity is to try a 1-year contract that would marry the communities, the partnership, our organization with the county, our strategic plan and our efforts, along with those of the Economic Partnership, the County of Santa Cruz, and hopefully San Benito County to work together to try and create jobs. We're currently looking at mapping housing opportunities and work opportunities or economic opportunities that could fit in a sustainable existing land use scenarios. Now, of course, we lack some water to do that, but there still are some entrepreneurial opportunities there to do that. Out of the 18,000 jobs that were lost, we suspect about 8,000 have returned, with the thanks to CSUMB and all the partner cities that are sitting here today with FORA. But we think there's another 10,000 that could be realized. And we'd like a 1-year opportunity to look at this and work on this with you. And so I ask that you support this contract today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I can't imagine that even a 2-year job like this, offer like this, would go untaken by 3 or 4, 15 different people that you interviewed. It just doesn't make sense to me, with the job market being what it is. I'm not sure how that, I would really like to see more details about how that all went down, and maybe reopen it. And publicize it better. I'd like to see what kind of what Avery Associates has to say about why that wasn't filled. What the problem seemed to be, and try again. And try to keep it local. And I'm not quite understanding why this would be Tri-County and how that fits into the FORA mission. Why this would be opening up and looking for jobs with San Benito and Santa Cruz County. How does that fit in with the FORA mission? And I'm not sure why. I'd like to revisit those numbers, that we just heard 18,000 jobs lost and only 8,000 of them recovered. I think in the FORA reassessment, that those numbers are not correct. To me, this seems like we're still trying to fill jobs that were lost during when the canneries closed. You know, I believe that the jobs have been recovered quite nicely in the past 20 years since the base was closed. I think that the Marianne Lepel's program has been around for quite some time now and had quite an opportunity to do what kind of job creation that they may have been capable of. And I think to echo what you heard previously about the colloquium, there were some spectacular ideas brought forth during that event that I don't think we fully examined at all. And I'd like to see us really build on that and examine what was brought forward. I think we could do something really new and different. One of the things that was mentioned over and over again was that our natural resources are what attracts the kind of creative and talented workforce that will do things that we haven't even thought of in this area, and stop trying to do the same old tired things. We have a lot of new ideas that haven't even been explored, so let's try some fresh new concepts and see where we go. But doing the same old thing is not going to bring us what we're looking for.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address this item? Okay, seeing none, public comment period is closed. Michael, do you want to address one of the items?
Well, the public did make comments in 3 general areas. One had to do about reopening the position, and that is an option that is before you. It was the first thing that we mentioned was an option available to the board. We did find, as Dave Spar indicated, that this was a difficult ask of folks, given the professions and what they pay at this point. There was another comment about doing this in an innovative, creative way. In the last month, I've been both at the International Economic Development Council's conference in Fort Worth. I just came back from San Francisco, where all of the reuse authorities across the nation were meeting. And in each case, there was a very heavy emphasis on technology-driven, new ways of approaching this, which are very comparable to what the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership is proposing that it's going to do for this region. So it is almost a direct reflection of the new crowdsourcing and crowdfunding approaches that are being taken, that the investment bankers and how they are approaching these kinds of events are all there. There were some questions and concerns about this being an effort that we haven't actually reflected the right numbers when we're talking about 8,000 jobs being replaced for 18,000 lost. That, in fact, is very similar to what we found in the reassessment process. That the board will recall that we are not yet complete with the work that we did to replace that. The Army did have 15 foot soldiers plus 3,000 to 4,000 civilians working here. That may not be exactly 18,000, depending upon whether you consider a soldier to be employed, but we did when the assessment was done in the 1990s. With respect to the questions and comments about the County, that is a direct reflection of what state law says is the Fort Ord Reuse Authority's responsibility. It is a 3-county obligation for Santa Cruz, San Benito, and Monterey County. So this would be a direct parallel with that mission of the Fort Ord Reuse Authority.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, back to the board. Entertain a motion, or if there are any other discussion or comments?
Chair, I have to go, so I just wanted to, do you mind if I just make a couple comments, and then
Sure, go
I'll
ahead.
let my colleagues work out all the fun details.
Throw a hand grenade and run out of the room, is that correct?
That's exactly
Yes,
my
that's
strategy.
right.
I appreciate a lot of the comments, and I certainly appreciate the work that Marianne has been doing so elegantly with bringing people together out around the peninsula. But I also agree with, I think it was Margaret Davis's comments about the original intent that brought this board together in a unanimous vote for an outreach effort to find someone, and that intent was to get outside of our local box in terms of just really as national search. Now, I completely understand the limitations that you, or the findings that the staff had when they tried that.
And I would be much more interested, though, in finding out how we can resolve that, whether it's through the first or second idea that you have in the as the options, or some other creative thing that the board now comes up with. Then I mean, I'm hoping that the group that is option number 3 will do what we would like them to do anyway. That's what they're here to do, and I mean, we could maybe separately discuss whether we want to support a fledgling nonprofit and, you know, contribute to that. I think that's an interesting idea, but I think it's a separate issue than what we originally discussed, which was finding that, you know, really interesting outside of the box proven track record for attracting economic employers, et cetera. So that's my piece. I have a very creative and intelligent alternate coming to sit with me and who will also contribute to the conversation. So thank you. I know you'll solve it.
Make sure you leave the room before the hand grenade goes off.
I gotta go.
Yeah, Supervisor Potter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And in the interest of time, I'll make a motion. If I get a second, I'll speak to it. I'd move the staff recommendation.
Okay, we have a motion by Supervisor Potter, a second by Mayor Rubio, and you said you wanted to speak to the motion?
No, I think there's been some good points made about getting a different perspective outside of the community, but I would argue that local knowledge is invaluable, that those that have been around to understand the impacts that we experience from a tri-county basis, not just from the local abutting jurisdictions. I think this group's well positioned to actually be able to facilitate the appropriate discussions with potential economic investors in this area that would be best advised of the constraints and the issues that we care about in this community that matter with the consistency of implementing the reuse plan as it was envisioned. There's a lot of people from outside this area that think that there are things that fit in this community that will impact our resources, so they don't understand the constraints that we have on this space. And I think for that reason, we'll do well with this organization. I think Ms. Beach raised an interesting point about perhaps they could continue in sort of an advisory capacity, but I'd rather see those dollars that we have invested in a concentrated effort rather than in saying we'll bring in a new party to take a look at this community versus those that have been here for so long and understand what really is the appropriate fit. As we talked for so many years about all of the economic pillars that lie within this area for economic redevelopment. So I think you know, MBEP is well positioned to advocate for the concerns of this agency and for the community as a whole, whether we talk about just the jurisdictions that are at this table or those that are outside of the confines of the boundaries of Monterey County.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Selfridge.
Yes, I think we all recognize what the Business Council has done in the past, but my question is, were any other organizations notified or given any kind of opportunity to come up with a proposal at this time?
In terms of providing 3-county regional economic development, we're only aware of the Monterey Bay Economic Partnership. If you are aware of another, we could do a solicitation, but we're not aware of an entity that in the public venue that does a San Benito, Santa Cruz, and Monterey County approach.
But we did not look
We
right
did
now.
do a full regional Northern California approach and select for the specialist position, but we did not issue an RFQ or RFP at all.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby. Oh.
Thank you. That's very sweet. That's very nice.
You're a smart man.
The initial issue came up in the Finance Committee, and Mr. Hulamard and I had a very lengthy discussion with everybody in attendance. And the concern is what came out of the Finance Committee was that there was funding to add a staff position, someone that would dedicate 100% of their efforts to the goals of FORA and what we do here. And we had a motion June 20th that added to that
economic development specialist staff position, some very particular terms emphasize the importance of intellectual clusters, include requirements that the candidate have a proven track record in attracting employers and linking education to economic opportunities. And what I'm concerned about with this new organization, and I understand that they're new, it's only been 2 years, but there does not have that track record that's demonstrated. The other concern that I have is that what was presented today was their focus is regional economic development. FORA is tasked with regional economic development. We are all here as representatives of our different jurisdictions looking to work collectively for that regional focus. And as David Spar stood up, he is the economic development director that the county has hired that is working for that focus in the county. And we have 3 representatives here bringing the benefit of what he does for the county to this regional board for decision. I'm also concerned if Marina is a member that we've already paid. Marina's paid, so why would Marina vote to pay again if we're already getting the benefit as a city from this organization? And each of our jurisdictions here have the chance to purchase these services as a member ourselves. The other thing that came out in the Finance Committee that I just want to point out, that also membership or involvement, it could be as little, my recollection, and Michael, you probably can remember better than I, was that you can belong to this organization for as little as $2,500 in benefit. It was some very small amount of money. So $100,000 of funds for an organization that is already servicing Marina, if Marina's a member, which I heard Marina's name, seems like a tremendous investment. And the focus and the approval on June 20th was looking for one person focusing 100% of their abilities to directing us as a board for economic development. And I did want to ask, when these 3 people, or 4, I heard 2 different numbers, declined, very interested in the job, thought it was a great job, and said the terms were not acceptable. What's not presented is, was there a counter? What terms would be acceptable? If it was a 4-year contract, or if it was $165,000, nobody has given us any consideration to make that decision. So I think I would I'm not going to support this motion because I would rather look for someone that's devoting 100% of their energies. We have wonderful forest staff. We've hired new people. We have people that have been here that devote their efforts to us, and I'm looking to expand that as a better opportunity than to hire this service.
Mayor Gunter.
I think as we sit here as members of the FORA board, we do have responsibilities to our agencies that have elected us or have put us in the position we're in. But I think as we look at Port Ord, and something that has been forgotten by the group of us sitting up here, we are a regional organization, and that we need to work collaboratively together to make this work. To hire one individual that can promote Port Ord, something that hasn't occurred in 20 years, surely is not going to happen with one individual. Whereas if we all work together, we can make this county grow, Santa Cruz County and San Benito County grow together. So I'm supporting the motion because I believe this is an opportunity where we will have some of the best minds go out there and help us work for the entire county and not just for individual cities. And I think this is probably going to be the best $100,000 this agency is going to spend in a while. It'll make us move forward. So I will support this motion.
Any other discussion? Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, one of my problems with this is the process. Last month, it was on our agenda. We had the choices before us. We had no discussion on it because the meeting ended before we could get to it. Now we have a contract in front of us. We haven't had any discussion of the options. I mean, then there have been a few things mentioned. So that's one thing that really concerns me. You know, the board authorized a position, as has been said. And as it says in the staff report, we added accountability and performance measures to determine the the success, yeah, sex, gender, the whole thing, the success of such a position. And so that was where we started, but we ran into some bumps. But now suddenly we are putting out $100,000 as a membership fee, and we are not requiring billing based on any specific instructions about what's to be achieved. We're just tossing out this money for a year or two in advance of any work being performed, and based on a list of kind of generic bullet points about what's going to happen. So it seems to me that there are various levels of participation. It seems to me if we want to be a member, and there may be arguments for that, we should be looking at the $10,000 or $25,000 range. And then if there are other specific things that we would like to be achieved and we want to spend more money, it should be done through an RFP or some sort of proper process, and a contract where the payment would be made after the services are performed. So there may be some merit to this. I just object to the fact that we're being presented with an option. We've gone pretty far down a certain path that the board did not discuss, and then we have no way of specifying what the work should be, the kinds of performance measures that we thought were important enough when we were hiring a position. Now we have something even more nebulous. It seems to me we should at least have some performance measures. So I can't support the motion as it's made. We're just throwing all the accountability right out the window.
Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby.
I think Supervisor Parker, right? Right. I think she made some good comments, and I agree with most of them. But I'm in favor of the motion. As the chair of the Finance Committee, I was there when it barely made it to the board to recommend for the position. I was sitting here when there was a vote against that position. They didn't want to spend the money to put that position in. The position went out, and it was advertised. It was advertised well. We got the best and the brightest, but who wants to take a job where we're only telling you may only be there for 2 years, particularly in Monterey County, right? And yeah, it can be fixed for 2 years. And then FORA is going away. So I think we did a good job there, but coming back, we're just coming back to what the members of the board said when they voted against the position, which is we should keep the money here locally, right? But if we're going to spend that money, we have someone out there saying they would match us dollar for dollar. We just had someone say this would be the best use of that money. This would be the first time FORA ever spent any money and got 100% back, right? So that's where I'm at. If it was 25, the person say you may match 25. But they're saying if we spend 100,000, they will match up to $100,000 to help us do this. Now we can go back and we can talk to the business council, we can talk to this group, and we can focus their energy on what the regional issues is for FORA. And for me, it was kind of disconcerting that we had people come up here and say that FORA should just be focusing on FORA and forget it's a tri-county regional board. Tri-county regional board. So if we have to work with San Benito, we have to work with Santa Cruz to get our name out there, get some expertise out there, then that's fine. I think that's outside the box. My point is, if we don't fill this position, which I think we just said, we've been out without it for 20 years, I think we can go another 6, unless the board changes their mind. But I don't want to sit that, leave that $100,000 on the table. I'm not prepared to do that.
Thank you. Any other last minute discussion?
Yes.
Mayor Rubio.
Yeah, I don't know if any of you recall, I wasn't really enamored with the position to begin with, but since we're here and we're doing this, I'll support the board in its desire to have an economic development specialist. Now, getting down to the real matter of this is to get the brightest of the brightest, to get someone that really wants to do this. $100,000 is not going to do it, and a 2-year term is just ridiculous. when you start talking $200,000, you're going to get some real interest. You're going to get someone that wants to do this and is going to do it well. And as far as the regional aspect of our board, of course, we're a tri-county regional impact area. Otherwise, we'd just be here with the land use jurisdictions, which doesn't bother me either. But but I think that leveraging the 100,000, which is a small amount for this type of project, into 200,000 with a capable entity that can perform the work, I think is a good resolution to this problem. Because we can go out there and look and look and look, but we're not going to get what we want for that kind of money. It's just plain and simple. So I will support the motion.
Look, we have a motion before the board and a second to authorize the executive officer to execute an agreement not to exceed $100,000.
And Mr. Chair, as the maker of the motion, I just want to clear the air on one suggestion that was made by Director Morton, and that is that she alleged that Mr. Spar was some sort of parochialist only concerned with the county. That is certainly not the case. I personally have said that it's my preference that any new development or any new business opportunities be first looked at within the local jurisdiction. I have really no desire to get into land use arguments at the county level on new development on unincorporated land. And I think when you take a look at where Mr. Spar's been as he gets to know this community, and there's a little bit of a learning curve there for sure, but I know that he's tried to work with the city of Marina on developmental opportunities around your airport. I know within the city of Monterey, he's certainly, just most recently, when there was consideration of the closure of the Maritime Museum by the History and Art Association, he was there looking at opportunities so that that facility could remain in operation. Perhaps there was a new venture that could go in there. For CSUMB, he's been one of the more tireless advocates for seeing what kind of partnerships exist out there and what can be done. I know he's been over in the city of Salinas looking at, Steinbeck innovation opportunities and what can be done there, trying to facilitate the opportunities for CSUMB at the Steinbeck Museum. And I think that that's what the county's trying to do through Mr. Spar's participation, is to not be county-centric, but to be focused on where are existing facilities that are already constructed, that are vacant or underutilized, what new opportunities can we find. But as a couple of people have mentioned, that's a regional effort, and the county wants to be truly regional in this, and I don't think we need to go out and break new ground in order to find new opportunities. So I just want to clear the air on that one issue. I'm happy to hear the answer to the question.
Okay, we have a motion second on the floor. We've had discussion. Let's go ahead and have a roll call vote.
Chair Edelin?
Aye.
Councilmember Dallas?
Aye.
Mayor Gunter?
Aye.
Mayor Camp? Councilmember Morton? Mayor Pro Tem O'Connell? Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby?
Aye.
Supervisor Parker? Mayor Pendergrass? Supervisor Potter? Mayor Rubio? Councilmember Selfridge?
No.
The motion passes and will return for a second vote.
Thank you very much. Good discussion. Let's move on. Next, we have the City of Del Rey Oaks land sales transaction. Okay, I guess Josh, or Jonathan, I'm sorry, you're going to take this one.
Members of the board, so today I'm just going to go over the summary of the City of Del Rey Oaks land sales transaction, and just note that that's an information report, and then there is a requested action to authorize the executive officer to execute amendment number 1 to the City of Del Rey Oaks Corridor Reviews Authority Insurance Repayment Agreement, which is attached to the staff report. Okay, so I apologize for legibility on the screen, but attached to the staff report is a breakdown of the land sales transaction. So the Del Rey Oaks property is broken down into 2 land sale transactions. The immediate one is for 73 acres, and that sales price was $3 million. There were a number of sunk costs in that property due to the resolving the lawsuit and legal fees with the former developer of that site. The first transaction of the land is the 73 acres, and then there's an option agreement for the developer to purchase the remaining 268 acres within 5 years. And the sale amount for the first 73 acres is $3 million, and the sale price in the option for the remaining 268 acres is a sale price of $17 million. So we prorated some costs that were sunk in the property based on the first transaction, and then the proration based on the percent of the land remaining is also moved to the second transaction when that occurs. So from the first transaction, this immediate transaction, the prorated costs totaled $139,842. And then there were the non-prorated costs, which were part of the settlement, and other costs that came out at the time of the sale. So the title company broker's fees, those are $15,000 roughly. The appraisal fee was $11,000. The legal fees collected at the sale time were $183,000. And then the settlement with Federal LLC was $250,000. So that totals a total of roughly $600,000 in sunk costs, subtracted from the $3 million price. That's $2.4 million to be split 50-50 between FORA and Delray Oaks, and so it's $1,200,000 roughly to the Fort Ord Reuse Authority as part of that first phase of the transaction. And then roughly in the next expected option agreement for the remaining 268 acres, those prorated sunk costs are around $500,000. The payment to Federal LLC is $500,000, and the expected deal costs with the appraisal fee and all that are expected to be around $20,000. So when that occurs, it would be a total sunk cost of about $1 million, which would be subtracted out of the $17 million sale price, and FORA would roughly receive $8 million of that sale when that occurs. And then on the repayment agreement with the City of Delray Oaks, so as the board may know, the City of Delray Oaks in the previous PLL insurance policy was on the hook for repaying for the premium for that, their prorated share of that. The developer was covering that cost, but when they left town, they left the City of Delray Oaks holding the bag. So there is still some remaining costs that the city is due to pay the Fort Ord Reuse Authority, and 21% of that would be paid at this time, and then the remaining 79% would be paid when the next transaction occurs. So that's $162,000 approximately to FORA at this time. And I'll take any questions.
Any questions by members of the board? Yes, Supervisor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question, and we did submit this question last month and didn't get an answer, so I'm going to ask it again. The land sale price here seems to be a little lower than what was originally projected in the CIP of about $180,000 an acre. And so I guess because this is lower, what are the implications for the CIP?
So the CIP is based on an average of previous land sales over the past 11 years or so. So this would be added into the transactions to come up with the next average when that's calculated.
And so the so we're basically projecting our ability to do our capital projects. I thought there was an amount that we, in order to project what's gonna happen, how are we gonna do it, but we really don't know. So we're just sort of hoping that we get enough money to do our capital projects.
So part of the methodology that we've used for projecting land sale payments has been by averaging what we've received in the past. So we've averaged the 10 or so transactions that have occurred over the years to come up with about $183,000 per acre is an assumption moving ahead. As more transactions occur, maybe that price will go up, maybe it'll go down, maybe it'll stay the same, but when we calculate our projections in the future, we'll base it off of what's occurred in the past. And this would be one of those transactions to include in the next analysis.
And so, depending what we thought we might do with those land sale proceeds, that might affect our formula for development fees and so on in order to be able to fund the different things that we're responsible to do.
Supervisor Parker, if I could interject a second. There are circumstances where our land sales will be much higher than $180,000 per acre. We've had a couple of those examples in the past where intensive use would make it higher. So, for example, the project recently sold by Merino are a little bit higher than that. So as we get higher winds, the number goes up and they go low. For land sales revenue, it typically provides support for FORA staffing. It provides support for building removal. But it doesn't actually get involved in infrastructure and mitigations. Those are our developer fees. So to the extent that we don't get funds, it slows the process of doing the building removal on the base. That's really where we've had the most impact.
Great. And since, yeah, well, maybe with the Marina transaction, we'll have more money available for some of that building removal. That would be, since we don't seem to be getting it from some of these recent land sales.
Right.
Thank you.
Other questions by members of the board? Yes, Councilman Morton.
Yes, so my understanding is we're deferring on the second portion also that we get paid when the option is exercised. And if the option is not exercised, which is quite feasible, are we paid in 2 years? Am I reading this correctly? Or what is the due date? And it's a little ambiguous, so I'm trying to make sure I'm reading it correctly.
So one of the terms is that term number 6 in that memorandum of agreement amendment. It says Delray Oaks agrees to secure its loan obligation to FORA of $565,456 by real property existing in the former Fort Ord. So that would mean FORA would have a real estate interest that could be used to obtain the amount that's owed.
And then the other question that I had is, if FORA defers collection, are we impairing our ability to do any project or any planned use of these funds? What is that?
Could you repeat that question? I'm sorry. Impaired.
Yes, if we defer collection, what is the impact on our calendar of completing FORA projects?
So we're talking about this $565,000 payment. If that's deferred, it's currently an obligation that FORA's been attempting to collect from the city of Delray Oaks for a number of years. So it's basically affects our initial payment for the PLL insurance approximately 10 years ago. So it does affect overall just financial FORA's financial picture of receiving repayment for those obligations we have. But it's not going to slow down perhaps building removal because we don't have a building removal project that's $500,000 in size, for example.
The city has been paying 5% interest per year up to this point, and until we pay out whatever amount we have owing FORA, we are paying 5% per year. So it is a small enough as a cash flow coming before, and we'd like to get rid of that 5% loan as quickly as we possibly can. It's a little higher than the average interest rate right now. I appreciate all the usury that FORA has been charging us. So, okay, out to the public, any questions or comments by members of the public? Seeing none, back to the board. Entertain a motion, please. Okay, Supervisor Potter moves staff recommendation, and Mayor Rubio second. Any discussion on the motion?
Just quickly, Chair, I thought it was a good comment that someone raised about as development fees come in, we're able to do our CIP. Meaning, if we don't develop, if we keep it open, keep it wild, we don't have those fees to do removal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I mean, it's just it's no clearer than that. Mm-hmm. We've been waiting on this money to do blight removal, so I support it because I want Delray to go forward, but FORA needs this money to remove blight. So, just wanted to put a point.
Well stated. Okay, we have a motion second on the floor. All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it. Okay, next we're running down at the end of the agenda now. Update on prevailing wage compliance, and Robert Norris will be covering that. Mr. Norris.
Well, a PowerPoint presentation which we've also made at the top of it was not put in
for board members, especially everyone country plan at this point in the meeting. Just a reminder that prevailing wage is and has been the policy of Port Order Reuse Authority, and the definition. Thank you, Michael. The definition of prevailing wage, as you can see behind you, the hourly wage, including benefits and overtime, paid to the largest group of laborers, mechanics, and tradesmen within a particular region. Next. Recent events, we've received a number of inquiries and complaints regarding prevailing wage, and so that the executive officer has requested that we may need to refresh the board's memory on the policy and its enforcement requirements and reporting requirements. In California, the California Labor Code establishes prevailing wage requirements for public works projects. And the definition of public works projects, as you can see, includes construction, alteration, demolition, or repair work done under contract and paid for in whole or in part out of public funds. You can skip to the next one. This is the history since 1995. The FORA procurement code adopted prevailing wage, and in various evolutions we've either clarified or we've amended the policy through 2007 in response to various conditions out in the field. Of particular note that seems to, as we've gone through various generations of contractors and representatives, the focus is that prevailing wage will be paid for all first generation construction on parcels subject to the base reuse plan. And this applies to work performed under development entitlements and in contract with a FORA member agency, including their transferees, agents, successors in interest, developers, or building contractors. Member agencies shall provide notice of the policy in all contracts and deeds, and FORA determines member agency compliance through its consistency determinations. This has relevance in that when complaints arise, people come back, and we have relied on essentially the jurisdictions to do their role in reporting and enforcing this. And sometimes it doesn't go to the satisfaction of all the parties. So if you can skip ahead, Jen, I'll get to the bottom line for prevailing wage. By providing this report, this update, we're doing three things. We're refreshing memories, reacquainting board members with the policy, with its elements, and providing the authorities and reference points. We're bringing to your attention that we have reached that point in time when there are new issues arising regarding reporting and enforcement that will require us to perhaps relook at our current policy and to also come back to the board with potentially seeking direction on an important element that has been identified in staff as a point of friction. It appears that both developers, contractors, and building trades are concerned around that there's not a residential labor rate for Monterey. And perhaps with the board's direction and interest, we would like to join forces with all the parties to seek that, to remove that as a point of friction within, our go-forward posture here in our economic revival. Also, we would like to reduce any future conflicts and clarify reporting and enforcement
requirements without having to have the parties sort of at each other's throat. And so the PowerPoint that's attendant to the report is for reference, but the verbal portion that I'm delivering is sort of to give you a heads up that we may need to come back with more direct action requesting board direction and endorsement and support of an effort to seek a residential labor rate for Monterey County. Thank you.
Yes, just to be clear, we have been working on this issue of prevailing wage from 1996 on. In fact, I think way back when FORA was created in 1994, the very first item that was before the Fort Ord Reuse Authority Board had to do with prevailing wage that would be paid for work done here. So the history of prevailing wage at the former Fort Ord goes all the way throughout FORA's history. The two things in the last 17 years since we have been directly engaged in construction, starting primarily with Preston Park and with the work being done at California State University, Monterey Bay in 1995 and 6, was how prevailing wage would be reported. It has consistently been a flashpoint for disagreement amongst the parties. Who reports? Where does it get funded? Where does it get recorded? Whether you have to go to DIR to get a report, whether they're supposed to be prevailing wage on site, whether it should be recorded with the cities. There's a number of issues there. Our cities have taken the responsibility for assuring prevailing wage by making sure that the provision is written into the deeds. On the former Fort Ord, City of Marina, when it provides a deed, there's an item on the board later on that there's specifically in the deed where it says you shall pay general prevailing wage, and it is exactly as it is in the Fort Ord Master Resolution. But this continues to be a flashpoint, and it might be useful to get folks in a room to have some full and frank discussion about how best to address this issue so that it isn't constantly coming back to this board as a problem. The question about residential rates, in my conversations with the labor representatives, I'm not sure that there is a residential rate that would give all that much of a preference for what would happen here. The Salinas rates might be different than the Monterey rates, but the state doesn't really do it that way. And so we'd have to have a discussion with the Division of Industrial Relations and see if there's a way to do something like that. But at least two of the jurisdictions have thought that that might be helpful and still address the prevailing wage question. So at this point, we don't have a recommendation. This is an information item, but we're happy to take your direction, and there may be some public comment.
Question about members of the board? Yes, Mayor. Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor Rubio.
Yeah, you know, as you all know, I'm very supportive of prevailing wage. It's the state law, and it's the policy of FORA. What the question is, I believe, is how do we handle enforcement? Right now, there's really no mechanism to enforce the prevailing wage articles of our own policy, and there's several ways to do that. There are organizations that are hired to do the prevailing wage compliance. They're compliance providers, and FORA itself could be a provider of that type of enforcement compliance service. So I think the staff has to provide us with a way to make that happen, either through a list of 3 or 4 preferred compliance providers, or the pathway for FORA being the compliance provider. And as far as overlaying a residential rate on the former Fort Ord, that could be very difficult, because right now with prevailing wage, all contractors, all general contractors, everybody is eligible to work in the former Fort Ord. They just have to be paid a certain rate. If you overlay a residential rate, then there's going to be certain contractors that are engaged in contracts that have a set rate, which is the prevailing rate really, will not be able to operate on the former Fort Ord because they will not be able to cut their rates per their contracts. So you will lose a good half of the qualified contractors being able to work on the former court order. And I don't think that was the intent of this policy. So that's a very, very touchy subject. There are certain workforces that do have a residential rate, and it can be applied in certain conditions, but they're not all the same. So how is FORA going to override contracts written between private entities and their represented workers? That would be a very difficult situation. The crux of the matter is not the represented worker, it's the unrepresented worker that is in jeopardy without compliance for prevailing wage. The unrepresented worker doesn't have anybody to go to bat for them. And what has happened by default is that the building trades has been that enforcer, the one that brings it to the forefront that something isn't being done. And for the most part, it's been seen as the bad guy. But what they're doing is enforcing the prevailing wage for the unrepresented worker, the worker that doesn't have a union rep to go take care of them. So it's been the unrepresented worker that has benefited from the prevailing wage statutes and from by involvement of others to try to enforce some kind of compliance. And I think that we should focus on compliance through the normal channels. The state law provides in school contracts and other major public works for compliance officers and compliance companies to make sure that those things get taken care of. And I think we should take that same approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments by board members on this item? Seeing none out to the public, any comments by members of the public?
Good afternoon, Jan Schreiner, speaking as a resident of Marina, although I am on the board of the Marina Coast Water District. I just want to support FORA in your decisions to maintain this prevailing wage. I think it's an excellent idea. I was approached during campaign season by a developer who was trying to tell me, and I'm sorry, it's so hectic during campaign season, but he was trying to tell me that the unions were somehow asking for more than prevailing wage. So I would like to, if you've heard anything like that, have you clarify that. Is there something going on that is above and beyond prevailing wage that people are struggling with? Because I do very much support the concept of unions and prevailing wage. But if there's something else going on, like I think Mayor Rubio is suggesting, compliance is sometimes needed with contracts. If there's something else going on that we need to bring people into compliance about prevailing wage, I think we should be aware of that. So that's the question. Is there something beyond prevailing wage that unions are asking for? But I do want to support the agreements that we have already established for prevailing wage, as Monterey County is a very expensive place to live, and people really deserve to have livable wages as well as a possibility of retirement. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public?
Yes, in regards to this, oh, sorry, not speaking on the microphone. I'm happy that the discussion has come up regarding prevailing wage, but what's disheartening is the fact that the people that are being discussed right now regarding this prevailing wage are basically crews that came in with the developers or hired contractors. These crews did not contain local people that maybe have been here for generations that have licensing in regards to the building trades. And I'm not understanding why that is never discussed. Yes, if you do work, you should be paid a livable wage. I understand that. But the thing is in regards to the prevailing wage law guideline or whatever, there should have been something also in place for the locals that were also trained in those fields, saying that, you know, if you're going to bring your crew in and work on this project, you're going to also have to hire so many locals also trained in that. And I don't understand why that has never been addressed in the 20 years that this has been going on.
Thank you. Next public speaker, please.
Ron Cheshire, Monterey Santa Cruz Building and Construction Trades Council, and if you can just bring this slide up, please, the enforcement slide. The enforcement slide. I sort of feel like this is early in the morning, about 7:30 on December 7th, 1941, and I'm stretched out on the deck of the USS Arizona. This issue is supposed to be about enforcement, but now there's two issues. So let me address the enforcement issue first. Is the Building Trades Council, along with members of our community and construction industry, back in the early 90s, all fought for local business and local labor to be utilized here at the former Fort Ord. And we came up with some recommendations to create a level playing field for the businesses and to give workers a piece of the pie to where they could become beneficial citizens of their communities. FORA agreed to adopt a prevailing wage ordinance in its procurement code, and he codified that in '97 whenever he brought on your master resolution. We were representing all workers, whether you're a union or non-union, businesses, whether union or non-union, level playing field, standard wages. Okay. Each one of you that's an elected representative of your communities, and even those of the agencies, all in your public works contracts, do your own enforcement. What's happened here is that somewhere along the line things went awry. Is each entity that has development taking place in it currently, where we have numerous problems, and my phone is ringing off the hook the last 3 weeks. The jurisdictions have given the enforcement over to the developer. We don't understand that. That's why I said bring up the slide. The member agency is responsible for enforcement of all other contracts. 1.02 of the master resolution talks about enforcement of the master resolution. Prevailing wages is a part of that. It says the jurisdictions are responsible for it. Why would they go ahead and turn it over to the developers? A developer can buy a level of service from a compliance group, the ones that Mr. Rubio was talking about. That can consist of, they receive a package of certified payrolls and the guy goes, oh, looks good to me. Or anything in between up to actual compliance and monitoring, to where someone goes out on the job sites and is sure that what is taking place is being recorded and that the workers are getting the proper wages. And like I said, anything in between. For a developer to do anything less than the maximum, they're putting themselves in a very liable situation, because they're ultimately responsible for the payment of prevailing wages also. So it's the recommendation of the Monterey Santa Cruz Building Trades Council that you direct FORA staff to bring forth a recommendation in regards to this issue. We've had some suggestions presented to you and such, and we think that that ought to be done. And we would be glad to participate in any study session, workshop or so. And I know the developers would just love it if you gave us the responsibility to go ahead and do the prevailing wage monitoring, which actually we'd consider. Now, in regards to the residential rates, residential rates means a cut and pay. If you listen to Mr. Rubio, in here in Monterey County, we have two residential rates. You have it for the Carpenters Union, which is 62 cents an hour less than the prevailing wage. And for sprinkler fitters, I think it's a $3 an hour break. There is no residential rate. Residential rates were created during the Wilson administration. Yes, during the Wilson administration. Your master resolution provides for general prevailing wage rate determinations, not for residential rates. And residential rates are, in the state of California, are usually no longer established without being vetted by the state and the State Building and Construction Trades Council. Now, I have heard developer after developer come up here and say, gee whiz, this just isn't going to work. Well, you know, these guys are supposed to be a lot more educated than I am. And so they went out and they got themselves involved in contracts and bought millions of dollars of land or whatever. And they didn't take this into consideration beforehand. You know, they beat you up last year because of your developer's fees. They even, I understand, sir. I know.
And I was a little late with my button, so
I
you're
know.
getting even more than 3 minutes.
Okay. They held you hostage in regards to extending FORA. So you would go ahead and drop fees, which was a big issue for the Building Industry Association in the state of California. They wrote about it for 2 years. You can get on the websites and see about it. Now they're going after the workers in this community. Not only the union workers,
Please wrap
but
up.
the non-union workers. And so, if you want to talk about it or discuss it, we'll be there at the table, I guarantee you. But we'll be there, and we'll be armed to the teeth. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Any other members of the public wishing to address the board on this issue?
Yvonne Stone, FORA on Environmental Justice. This organization has been talking about prevailing wages for years. We have brought it to FORA. We took it to the county. I'm meeting with the county right now. We're meeting with the Equal Opportunity Department or whatever that means. I don't know. But prevailing wages have not been available for the people who lost jobs. My husband is a veteran. I'm a veteran's wife. And what happened to us in this process is criminal. And I do mean criminal. And the people that are getting these jobs and coming into our community, they are not the local people. And I don't know where everybody is getting their information. Talk to the people, especially the African American community. Our men cannot get decent paying jobs. They get what somebody gives them. People working in McDonald's and Burger King all up and down the street. No black businesses. No nothing. No restaurants. What in the heck are you all talking about and looking at when we are representing our community, bringing this information to you free of charge, and you're doing nothing with it? 20 years. And I keep hearing all this crap about people with jobs. There was 30,000 people who were working at Fort or were members of those families. When they sent the folks to Fort Hood, a lot of those kids stayed in Monterey County, became the homeless street kids in Monterey County. Our veterans are walking the streets with nothing, begging for jobs, begging for help. Well, we give them peanuts. We give them a little piece of bread. Come over here and get some food, get some clothes. That is the basis of Monterey County. The Goodwill. Go to Goodwill and get, clothes are free. Clothes are cheap here in Monterey County. But what about people respectfully being able to work in their community and take care of their families after losing careers that were managed by our government, our own government? And we talk about Veterans Day. Yeah, Veterans Day for some people, but not for all of us, and especially not for the African American men.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public speakers? Saying none, the public comment period is closed with regard to this item. This is an information item. The staff has heard the comments made during the discussion. We'll incorporate those comments in future actions when we bring something back for an action item in the future. Mayor Rubio.
Yes, I'd just like to reiterate that I would like to see some, either a request for qualification for some way of assembling a list of qualified compliance organizations to include a proposal from the building trades, and also to understand what it would take for FORA to take on that task.
Staff, sorry, we'll make sure it happens. Other last minute comments? Yes.
Just a comment. I did want to say that in the city of Marina, and to address Mr. Cheshire's comment about delegation of the responsibility for enforcement of prevailing wages to the contractor, that the city of Marina has added new provisions in its DBAs going forward that particularly require that the prevailing wage be posted on the job by the contractor, and that in addition to other remedies provided out of a settlement with the labor union, that the contractors be required to include to provide a redacted copies of certified payroll records to any joint labor management committee requesting such records no later than 10 business days after receiving a written request. So we are trying to work with the trades, make sure that there is enforcement, and these contracts have terms that allow the public to look at them and go forward with enforcement. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other comments, last minute comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll deem the information item received. Next, we have a regional urban design guideline status report by Mr. Josh Metz. I would like to say that I know a lot of us here around the table have been to the meetings we've had over the last 2 days. They've been very complete, very thorough. You and your team have done an excellent job, and I think it's really going to pay off dividends in years to come with regard to the design guidelines and photo ordinance. Thanks for all the work you guys have done.
Closing up here. Yeah, so I'll be providing just a brief introduction and then introducing you to our consulting team. What Chair Edlin was referring to is over the last 2 days and the ensuing 3, we'll be dealing with a site visit that included public stakeholder meetings. Yesterday we had over about 120 people through this room during the day. This morning we've had a series of small group discussions over at the FORA offices. We'll be doing a tour and improving our film project that is accompanying this whole effort, and then meeting with individual jurisdictions for a full day on Tuesday. So a lot of exciting things happening, and thank you for everyone who's made the time to come out and participate. Just as a way of a brief background, as you all have hopefully well aware, this is a process that's been underway for many years. It was originally started with the reuse plan, and really what the urban design guideline effort now is represents as a refinement of the reuse plan guidance there. And on your table, you'll have a handout that includes this graphic. For those might be more clear to look at, but it's produced directly from the reuse plan, and is one of the best geographic reference points for the extent of the area that will be influenced by this process. The basic idea here is that the reuse plan identified really 5 areas that needed to be included, the first being the Highway 1 scenic corridor, and that was adopted by the FORA board in March of 2005. This effort will particularly focus on the town and village centers, the gateways, regional circulation corridors, and trails and buffers. So you can see by this graphic that it is just that, it's a graphic. And so the getting into the details of exactly the space, extent, and all of that will be part of this process. And we do have some precedent to draw on for that. The guidelines, once completed and approved by the FORA board, will become part of the consistency determination process for new projects. Each land use jurisdiction will adopt the guidelines into their respective general plans and zoning code and be responsible for their implementation. And as directed by this board, there was a task force convened, mostly of the city managers from each of your jurisdictions, the Regional Urban Design Guideline Task Force, and we went through a rather detailed and lengthy process to recruit one of the leading firms in the country that deals with this type of planning, Dover Cole and Partners, and their team, including transportation engineers, economists, and environmental specialists. And we're quite pleased with the work so far and are excited to see what's to come. I will now turn it over to Jason King, who's the project director. He's a principal at Dover Cole, and he will take you through a bit more about what we've been up to and introduce your team. And we do look forward to continuing this work over the next few days and having the chance to interact more with your staff and move this process forward. Thank you.
So my name is Jason King. Our firm and our combined firms, we have several members of the consultant team here. I've been working around the country and around the world. We're contributing to the literature. We're learning a lot here at the FORA Reuse Project. We've been getting a chance to tour around to talk to a lot of people. We have been working with Bill Lennertz from the National Shred Institute, Victor Dover. My principal worked on a book called Street Design. Very shortly you'll get to meet Peter Katz, who wrote a book on new urbanism, and Jeff Speck, just recently the author of a book called Walkable City. So what we're doing is we're bringing national experts to weigh in on the local issue. Our job specifically, you understand already, but for everyone, is to work on mixed-use development, to achieve diverse neighborhoods, to encourage sustainable development practices, to work on unique identity for areas around the college campus, and to reinforce the natural landscape setting consistent with the peninsula character. So in a nutshell, those 5 design principles from the base plan is what we're getting specific on. That's our task. We just got to meet with over 120 people as part of our site visit and our interviews. A lot of the people here in this room are people we got to talk to in this room. We're getting ready for the big charrette. That's going to be in February 2nd through the 13th. We're bringing everybody. We're going to have a conversation that involves a couple hundred, maybe 1,000 if we do our job right. And by the fall, we hope to have a product that we can bring to you that you can adopt. A consensus document, something that everyone can agree on what we're working toward. That charrette in February has multiple events. And I know you're very busy, but I implore you to come to the February 3rd kickoff and hands-on design session. That's when we have everybody around the tables. We deputize everybody within 60 miles of here as citizen planners, and we take their ideas to create the design guidelines. It's a 2-week-long process. Our work in progress is going to be Thursday, February 12th. Everything's going to happen here. We also have a virtual town hall going on, an online discussion about design, about streets and buildings and public spaces. That's at fora.mindmixer.com. It's only about 30 people have participated so far. We're going to get that number up. That's sort of an unsupervised conversation happening with members of the public about design. We learn a lot from that. So yesterday, right over here, that picture was taken as we worked on dot exercises and one-word cards and community input. Over 120 people were here, and different tables presented ideas. We met on a variety of topics: environment, transportation, access, trails, urban design. And I want to share a couple quick results. I know we're pressed for time. The conversation starts really simple on design. People came in, there were pictures on tables, and they put red or green dots based on whether they liked the image or they didn't like the image. Okay? And so this is the result from that. I'll show you a few of these. The green means they liked it, and the red, not so much. Green for green dots, red for red. And then we told them afterward that these were kind of correlated. So you can see just immediately the 2 different ways of doing a hotel. People liked the one on the left and not so keen on the one on the right. And we talked about signage, and we talked about porches and front doors and glass and all of the elements that make the one on the left a more interesting one. And we talked about what goes into a great street space. The image on the right shows a kind of boarded up street space, and there's no eyes on the street, and there's nothing for that person walking down that sidewalk to look at, even though it's a great sidewalk. Walkability is more than just sidewalks. Places have to be safe, comfortable, and interesting. And the participants, without us saying anything, recognize that immediately. They liked the image on the left with the galleries and the windows. We talked about open spaces. You know, we showed them a picture of an enormous open space on the left, but one that hasn't been thought about very much. One that was done as a part of an obligatory process, required to do a 20% open space, and that's what they did. Versus the one on the right, much smaller, but with thought, with the trees, with the gazebo. People were saying they wanted more on the right and less on the left, and that's interesting because that is one of those things that could translate to savings for developers. Less open space, but open space more carefully planned. Design matters. And we talked about transportation improvements. What happens when two big streets meet each other? The way on the left is one way of handling it. Multi-way boulevard, like all the design recommends all across the country, with slow-moving traffic on one side, high-speed traffic on another, bicyclists, everything integrated. A lot of trees, versus the way on the right with the flyovers and the high-speed lanes. So that's really just how we get the conversation rolling about design. And one other exercise I'll show you, we handed out one-word cards. A lot of you filled this out. You haven't seen the results of this yet. We said the card just has one word that comes to mind about the former Fort Ord, now and in the future. And people would write down the words. And then we summarized the words. And the more time the word appeared, the larger the word appears in the word cloud. So you ready? All right. One word that comes to mind about Fort Ord today. You see potential. You see wild. You see developing. For potential to appear that big, that means probably 20 or 30 people use the word potential. But you also see, and you see opportunity, a lot of positive words. But you also see blight appeared really large, inaccessible, conflict, right? One word that comes to mind about Fort Ord in the future. Community appeared enormous. We don't know why exactly that is, but that was so interesting to us. That's like 35, 40 people said community. And destination, and vibrant, and opportunity, and hopeful. So this is the direction that we take. We're going to keep doing one-word cards like this to keep this conversation going, but we've already learned a lot. More to follow. Thank you very much.
Josh, is that the presentation right there? Okay, any questions or comments by members of the board? Excellent presentation. It's a very well thought out, very long process that integrates not only the local community but all the way around here. It's pretty good. Again, no board member comment. I don't see. Okay, out to the public. Any comment by member of the public?
Hi, Mimi again from Fort Ord Environmental Network. One thing that I am learning attending these meetings is that for Monterey County, there are two counties within this one county. There is the Monterey County of the haves, and there is the Monterey County of the have-nots. And so, based on the presentation we just saw, that would be a great presentation through the eyes of the people that are considered the haves. But what is being ignored is what is seen through the eyes of the people that are considered the have-nots. Looking at the map that was provided today, kind of just shows the corridor, et cetera. We had previously found a map that's on the City of Marina website, basically giving more detail in regards to what the Fort Ord community would look like through the eyes of the have-nots. Shows 1,237 homes, a buildup of the Dune Shopping Center, adding restaurants, the theater, even a brewery, city parks, an institute to study canines, various things. But for someone that might be considered low income, someone that might have been unemployed pretty much since Fort Ord closed, I don't see their needs being represented. I don't see anything in regards to the fact that our teenagers here locally that graduate from high school, almost 80% of them most likely won't go to college. So they need something to do. I don't see that on here. I see that when you go to the local shopping center at the Dunes, most of the employees are college students that came to CSUMB, but they're not local. They came to the school. They weren't local students that graduated, say, Monterey or Seaside, and then chose CSUMB. they came from Southern California, Northern California, or out of state. So, I mean, basically my point is I like the presentation, you know, I like what I saw, but I'm not seeing the actual community represented in the presentation. I'm not seeing how the process was done in regards to how you contacted the people that you interviewed or the people that showed up. In the picture that was shown, I didn't even see a person of color. So it makes me wonder, was that community even represented? I know that's taboo in Monterey County to bring up the color issue, because that we're always told that at most meetings. But I mean, I didn't even see that. So who exactly is helping with the regional urban design guidelines? What communities are involved? Are there any grassroots organizations involved? Are there, you know, in regards to the community members, do they range the income gamut? I mean, do you have just high income, middle income community members involved, or do you actually have input from low income members that might see a need maybe for a community center for the kids or a training center for parents that have been out of work? I mean,
Time.
I understand that. So, I mean, that is basically my point is I understand what you guys are trying to do, but you're not looking through everyone's eyes that actually live in Monterey County.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment?
Ron Cheshire, citizen. Jerry Smith and I only had one slight disagreement ever, and it was when FORA was actually going to look to amend the prevailing wage ordinance to make it clearer to those that didn't understand it. And here was the problem, is originally it called out for a provision. What you want?
I want you to stay on topic.
It's public comment, isn't it?
It has to do with the regional urban design guidelines. At least you're consistent.
Jan Schreiner speaking as a resident and someone who participated with the workshop yesterday all day. Some of the comments of the previous speaker, people were talking about that at our table. We had a couple of students and we had a lot of people that are often here at FORA meetings, but we didn't know how the outreach had been done. So I hope that the members of the public who are here will participate with consultants in providing contact information and methods that would be appropriate to bringing in everyone for the community. And I think it's a great effort, and it can always be improved. And I just want to say thank you for using FORA resources to try to get people together and envision the future that will work for everyone in the community.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment period or public comment? Sorry.
I was given an interview date, I think it was November the 18th, but meanwhile, evidently it was the wrong date. And I'm assured that somebody will interview me concerning this process. But what I'm asking for is for whoever wants to interview me to come to me, because I want to show you my community. I want to show you the people out there that you really need to be talking to, including, and that are not here in this room. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other public comment? Josh, would you like to answer the question about public outreach that was asked a few minutes ago?
Generally, we've been working hard to be as inclusive as possible in our outreach. We have, I think, over 300 people that were contacted directly, inviting them to these interviews based on all our conversations with people who we could draw on to provide input. So we're continually looking to grow that number. Like Jason said, we want as many people as possible. Ms. Doe, we're looking forward to getting your input as well as your staff, and we'll come to you. Indeed, I think that's something that we can probably work out. So, you know, as a matter of generality, we are at this point the funnel's wide open, and we're looking to hear from everyone. And the idea is through the process, almost like that word cloud, the best ideas rise to the top, and that's what we're looking for here is to have happen. So Any other questions? Or?
That's it for right now. Thank you, Josh. Again, you and your team, great work. Okay, back to the board last minute comments. Mayor Rubio.
I understand what some of the speakers are saying. The words that we're hearing are community involvement, community engagement. But how much of the community can show up on a weekday between hours of 9 and 5? That leaves out a huge segment of our population. How many of them can take the time to come here on a weekday and engage in a free flow of ideas when they have to worry about their kids? They had to take time off of work. Many of those things. So I know it's kind of hard to do, but to have these idea gatherings, sessions in the communities on a Saturday would give a whole different aspect to what the results are. If you had a group in the Oldemeyer Center on a Saturday, you would get a whole different look than you get here today. If you had an offering in Marina at the Community Center on a Saturday, you would get a whole different look of who you're talking to, and the same thing in Salinas. So I don't know how you fix that, but I think it needs to be addressed in one way or another. And when you start looking at charrettes, how are you going to include that community in that discussion? So that I think it's worth taking note that we actually, by, you say the funnel's wide open. It's not really. It's only open to those people that can take the time to come here on a weekday. Josh.
Yeah, I think that's excellent input, and indeed, we are somewhat limited in this particular segment, as Jason identified. This is a preparation visit for the 2-week long period, which will be the actual design charrette, and it's during that time that we can take your input into account and make something happen for a weekend event. We do have, as Jason indicated, the first day, the February 3rd design kickoff event is in the evening, scheduled currently from 4 to 6 p.m. We have had conversations even about later times, but I think we'll take your input as we have on a few items already and make that happen as you described.
The website.
Oh yeah, and in addition to that, we do have a website called FORA.mindmixer.com that's accessible to anyone who can be on a computer 24 hours a day. So there's that element as well, and we are working to increase our digital outreach. But certainly the in-person meetings are really the most powerful, and I think the team and myself personally were wanting to make those connections, and we'll work to make stuff happen on the weekend.
Okay. Any other last minute comments?
I just wanted to point out, my understanding is the website is for public input. It's not just to go look and here's what's happening, but it's where you can communicate with this group.
You can communicate
24 hours a day, 7 days a week, right now, going forward.
Indeed, it's an open forum. There's direct email and photos of our consulting team, as well as the FORA staff who's actively working on the project. You can contact us directly through that, as well as pose questions and respond to comments that have already been made. So it's very kind of leading edge kind of technology that really has had great impact in other communities around the country that it's being used.
Okay, we're approaching 16:30, where Mayor Pro Tem Oglesby turns into a pumpkin, I believe, after he goes past that. Any other comments on this?
I'll try not to go past that point, but
okay.
I just want to piggyback on what Mayor Rubio said about participation. There's a great presentation, but your participation was lacking. And so you guys should not pat yourself on the back about the people that came down here over those couple of days. Those are the people that are passionate enough. Those are the people that have cars to get over here. I looked at the pictures. I looked at the room, and it was not representative of the community. I doubt if anyone that was in that room needed a job. Okay? or they were looking for work. When you look at your word cloud, and I'm giving you kudos, I think what you guys did as well, but my point is when you look at your word cloud, one of the smallest words was education. So those people, that's taken care of, right? If we're going to talk about community was so big, open space was so big, education was one of the smallest words. So my point is we need to have the outreach. We need to have some of these meetings, and I know the 2-week one is coming up. So we need to coordinate, and it should be in Marina, it should be regional, should be in Salinas, should be in Seaside, should be, Pacific Grove. I don't care. But it cannot take place in this building where you have to have a car. And I don't think the bus stop, I don't know what I guess the bus stop goes to the, across the street to the, yes.
Yeah.
But my point is just, when you talk about the funnels, just continue to open up the opening to the funnel. And but I think you guys, I know we got the best consultants and the best company, and with you, you're leading it. But we just need the participation of the community because it's if we want this part of FORA connected to our cities, I think the citizens that live in our cities should be able to participate a little bit more, not just the most passionate ones that are willing to get in their car or could take the day off to come up here to do it. So I thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Yeah, hearing that loud and clear, and indeed we are coming to Seaside on Tuesday evening. The whole group is coming to meet with the city staff for a good hour and a half. Hopefully you'll be there. But
well, I may or may not, but see, that's the problem. You said city staff. I need you to meet with the working folks in my community.
Right, indeed.
Okay.
That's a beginning, and what I'm going to ask for is that continued enthusiasm when we come asking for your help in making those connections happen, because I think that's where I think we can work together on that.
Speaking for the mayor, whatever we can do to make that connection, we will make it happen.
Awesome. Thank you.
I hear holding hands is coming down the pike too. Never mind. Just kidding. Anybody else? Any last minute comments? Okay, this is an information item. We'll deem it received. Again, Josh, great work on part of yours and your teams. And the comments were made here today will be incorporated in that RUDG team, I'm sure. Next public comment period. Any member of the public can address the board on any item not on the agenda. You've got three. Okay. Maneuvering for position.
Ron Cheshire, I'll continue. I'm sorry it's been a heck of a week. Won't get any better, especially if I have to sit down with 33 people at Thanksgiving. So anyway, the point is that at one time when FORA adopted its procurement code, you had a local hire provision in it, okay? And there was even that local hire provision was extended into the construction element that where the prevailing wages were called out. That element itself, I know it said technically that it would stay in effect until December 31st, 1999, unless the board readopts it. Well, in 1997, you actually came up with the master resolution, and we sort of thought that was a readoption, but I'm sure attorneys could argue forever whether it was or it wasn't. Okay, but what happened was it wasn't included in the prevailing wage requirement that you would have local hire. And as I said, it was the only thing Jerry and I ever disagreed to. And I had to explain to him is you cannot make it mandatory. You cannot mandate that a local contractor gets a job. You cannot mandate that certain workers get a job unless. Now, I'm not an attorney, but Mr. Giffen, who's got his finger on the pulse over there, may know this, and I will bring in someone that does, is you as an organization, as an agency, may adopt what I'll just call a statement of overriding considerations, something like in an EIR, or a statement of social or economic need. If there are certain conditions that exist with Port Ord in regards to blight and being economically disadvantaged and where people need opportunities and such, if you adopt such a statement, then you can go ahead and institute requirements for local hire or so. And I've heard LaVon up here for years, and I agree to her to some extent. I mean, she's been a warrior in regards to it. Almost as annoying as myself, but is, but maybe that should be brought out to light and see if we can move forward with it or not. It's the only option that I think we have as a community, as a legal option. So thank you very much, and we'll see you later. Take care.
Thank you, sir. Next speaker.
Yes, I consider myself annoying because if this is the only way as a statewide organization that I can participate and not really help to make decisions, then this is what I have to do. We recently met at CSUMB, and I asked a question of how many of our local students and were attending CSUMB, and how many of our local citizens were employed with projects at CSUMB. I was told by Mr. Ochoka that I could call his office and make an appointment, and we will sit down and we will talk about that and look at some figures. We tried for a month, myself and the people in my office, to get that appointment, but we were blocked by staff who asked us a bunch of questions but still did not make the appointment. I received a very short letter in the mail with some kind of chart folded up, which we did not understand, and we still have not gotten our answer. And the university is a public university. We were told before that it would be a community university. The people who voted to have that university, we were told it would be somewhere for our local students where they can grow and learn, but that is not the case. We were even told there would be a large environmental component. That has not taken place. So if it's so important that our organization cannot sit down with the president and have a meeting face to face, then something is wrong. This is my community. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board on any other item not on the agenda?
Yes, I'm actually on my way out, but one of the things that coming to these meetings I've always wanted to ask, and I think I've actually asked Mr. Hulamar in an interview, or not interview, but a meeting with him when I met with him with Vaughn, is that on any given day for one of these meetings, there's usually about 30 members on the surrounding table. And when I look at those members, I wonder how many of those members actually live here in Fort Ord. And I know from what I've been told with the meeting with Mr. Hulamar that it's actually 0 that actually live on Fort Ord, whether it be Preston, Abrams, Frederick, Schoonover, Stillwell, Marshall, any of the parks. And I think part of the disconnect with the community here, because for some reason residents on Fort Ord never really contacted about anything. I mean, for the presentation we just had, he said they sent out like 300 notifications or something, but we have many residents on Fort Ord than 300. But for whatever reasons, those residents are never informed of stuff. But the thing is that I think part of the disconnect is I don't understand how you guys can make decisions for a community that you don't really live in every day. And then on top of that, you're not in contact with that community every day. You're not, how many of you have actually gone to a resident's home, just chosen a park and just gone to the home and say, hey, I'm on your FORA board, we are the entity that governs your community. Can I just have a 5-minute conversation with you to see, hey, what's going on in your daily life as a resident here on Fort Ord? I mean, how many of you have actually done that? And I'm thinking that if you guys get more in touch with that community, instead of just the outlying communities surrounding it that are benefiting from what's going on here, it might actually help more. Because I know I have personal family members that live in Fort Ord that know nothing about the FORA meetings, that know nothing about the different things that happen here, even the tours that were going on. So I think that needs to be improved regarding the FORA board.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other member of the public wishing to address the board? Any item not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, public comment period's closed. And we next go on the executive officer report. I understand Mr. Hulamard said he would make this fairly brief.
Yes. No. Chair Edel and members of the board, there are a few items I think are very important to point out today. The first one is under executive officer's report is item 10G. There's a note there about travel. It points out that there was an Association of Defense Communities Forum and an IEDC, International Economic Development Council conference, both of which I attended. I believe that the benefits of those two conferences, we might want to, if we have the time, doesn't need to be this month or next month, but I do believe that either the Post Reassessment Advisory Committee or maybe the board as a whole would benefit from some of the both materials and the up-to-date current reports that were provided about the kinds of things we could do that other people are doing to help our economic development, our recovery programs, our trails programs, our conservation programs, our environmental cleanup programs, and so forth. Second item, Chair, if I could proceed, I'd like to talk about the item number 10J, which is an administrative consistency determination for entitlement for the City of Marina's Marriott Hotel. I'm sorry, 10I. That's what happens when your eyes get old. That item is an administrative consistency determination. There's an entitlement already for that property on the former Fort Ord. In those circumstances, we provide this for the board members to review if there's any item here where they disagree with the decision made by the City of Marina to find this consistent with the base reuse plan. They can make an appeal to this board. We received no such request from the public or member of the board. Therefore, this item, as this proceeds today, would be deemed enacted. The next item is item 10J, Chair. Under the Environmental Services Cooperative Agreement, I did receive a few questions from board members regarding the status of this project. As you know, in the ESCA report, whenever we do this, we provide an update on where we are financially with respect to the ESCA contract. And we are moving ahead with our discussions with the Department of Defense and the U.S. Army. We are up to date on all of the items. The financial report is on page 93 of 117. We still have about $16 million left in the contract overall. Most of the remaining funds are either under contract for completing the work or with FORA for administrative work. The Army has agreed to allow us to continue to use those administrative funds to work with the jurisdictions for the long-term stewardship of all of these properties. And so that's very good news for us with FORA in that that contract is adjusted to allow us to continue to charge administrative costs. The last item I'd like to mention, Chair, is under the base reuse plan reassessment report, categories 1 and 2. I mentioned earlier that the PRAC will be meeting in the future, and I like to give them a briefing of the items that we received from ADC. But in addition, I think the status report on a couple of these category 1 and 2 items and others, I just want to bring your attention to those because I think by January we'll provide a much more detailed report of what's happening with PRAC. And I also want to highlight that the PRAC has been leading the idea of getting a regional effort to do a trails symposium. And that has some real benefits. We got some very outstanding economic folks talking about how an excellent trails program contributes to the economic benefits of the community. And I think that symposium would be beneficial to all the board members. Chair, that's the end of my report.
Any questions with regard to Mr. Hulamard's report? Yes.
I think I would like, me personally, I would like to have that presentation, you know, to the whole board. I think it's important. If you go to a meeting like that and you feel if there's something to provide us, then that's good enough for me to put it on the agenda. So I encourage the exec team to put it on the agenda.
Will do. Any questions? Okay, any items from members? Yes, Mayor Rubio.
I would like to ask the executive director in consultation with Authority Council to look at the issue of local hire. See where that's at in our ordinances, and what we can do to ensure a greater degree of local folks on working on the base.
Yes, Mr. Moore.
Yeah, I'd just like to applaud staff for and the executive committee for including item E in the FORA legislative agenda. This is the item about seeking government funding for augmented water supply projects. Of course, I prefer to see this as item A on the legislative agenda. I do want to quibble with one phrase in the staff report. There's a sentence there that indicates that part of the purpose of this is to continue to work with MCWD to ensure that they fulfill their contractual obligation to FORA for water source augmentation. I want to put just a couple of objections on the record. One is, I believe Marina Coast Water District's record of activities in the Ord community does not support the assertion that there's any ensuring that needs to be done. We put $1 million worth of infrastructure in the ground to provide fire flows for all the jobs to be created at the UC Best property. Of course, you can imagine our dismay and frustration when the vast majority of those thousands of jobs had never materialized. We spent hundreds of thousands of dollars planning the regional urban water augmentation project to provide, among other things, 1,200 acre-feet per year of reclaimed water for the Ord community. You can imagine our dismay and frustration when insufficient potential reclaimed water customers firmly signed up to take that reclaimed water. We spent $18 million pursuing the regional desalination project, which would have provided all of the desalinated water called for in the Fort Ord reuse plan. You can imagine our dismay and frustration when that project fell apart due to decisions of a commercial water utility. And we spent additional millions of dollars reconfiguring water and wastewater collection systems on the Fort Ord community in support of developments such as East Garrison, the Dunes, Seaside Highlands, CSU Monterey Bay, and the Ord military community. So we don't think we need any ensuring. We think we have a pretty good track record. Secondly, that sentence is a paraphrase, I think, of a single term in the 31-page water and wastewater agreement between FORA and Marina Coast. But I would like to bring to the board's attention an equally important term in that agreement, and I'll just quote it more or less directly. MCWD shall not be required to take any action in connection with furnishing the facilities to the service area unless and until a source of funds is secured from the service area to pay in full all of Marina Coast Water District's direct and indirect short-term and long-term costs, including costs of administration, operation, maintenance, and capital improvements to provide adequate system capacity. So I certainly urge all the board members to make sure that you're intimately familiar with the various terms in that 31-page agreement between Marina Coast Water District. We want to support you, but somebody's got to pay for it, and that's got to be figured out. We work hard to try and do that, but we need FORA's help strongly in that regard to go forward.
Thank you, Mr. Moore. Point's well taken. Any other items from members? Okay, appreciate everybody showing up. We've got a lot of work done today. Happy Thanksgiving around the corner. We are adjourned. Thank you.